Now our panel, Holly Myers-Lucas, an economic fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Alan Mendenhall to weigh in on all this. I got to say, guys, some of these findings and rankings really surprised me. Not so surprised, though, about Idaho taking the top spot. It has one of the lowest median real estate tax rates in the country at 0.5% and the 8th highest home ownership rate. Also, the 4th lowest tax rates overall and highest median household income growth. That sounds pretty good to me, Holly. But also, what other important factors should people look at when they're deciding to kind of, pick up and go to a different state and buy a new home?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that's contributing to this is this dynamic of being able to work from home. And so being diligent about where you're really picking to lay roots. Gen Z really loves work-life balance. And so, as you said, Idaho is certainly not surprising. New Hampshire isn't surprising either. People are relocating to areas right now where the quality of life truly trumps the ability to work, because so many people are able to work from home now.
Yeah, and that's such a good thing for a lot of people. I do wonder, though, when people hear these rankings, do they, pick up and go to one of these states? And what point does it come maybe not the best place, because so many people have gone there? CPI also out this morning, and it shows inflation eased slightly to 3.4%. Alan, let's talk a little bit more about that. I know you've written about inflation before, not merely as a macroeconomic problem, but is something that changes household decisions and family life. Let's talk a little bit more about that. And we talked so much recently about affordability.
Yeah, well, home sales are down, prices of homes are up, mortgage rates are still up around 7%. So when people are talking about affordability, a lot of what they're talking about is home buying. And the mortgage rates at almost 7% are a big piece of that. Someone like me who got my house in 2017, I locked in at a 3% interest rate. Now, I got divorced in 2022 and had to refinance at that point. And I was upset at the time at having a 3.5% interest rate. So when we're looking at interest rates at almost 7%, that really puts things into perspective. But although we see wages growing, it's not enough to fully close the gap by these higher prices. And first-time buyers face a large shortfall between median incomes and the income needed to qualify for a home. So it's really tough for young people in particular, and a lot of them are saddled with student loan debt and things like that. And so it's tough to get a house. A typical household still needs roughly $110,000 to $120,000 in income a year to comfortably afford a medium-price home in many areas.
Yeah, and of course you need a big chunk of money for a down payment too, so that can be hard to come by for some people as well. Holly, July home sales down nearly 2% from June, while prices rose about 2%. Hash this out for us, and for those who are looking to buy a home, what would you say to them right now?
Yeah, I think, they're down, but also our economy is in a weird place right now. Gas prices are up and cost of living is up. So I wouldn't read too much into this. I think that people, in terms of the housing market, there are certain areas of the country, Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Nevada. There's certain areas that if you asked a real estate agent on the street, they would laugh if you said that home sales were down, because those markets have been on fire. There's a mass migration happening across the United States. There's so much movement with people relocating for the quality of life. And I think that if interest rates, we've been so hoping that interest rates would come down, and they just haven't. It's been, you and I have been talking about this now for 2 years. It's just, they haven't come down. And so I think that right now the buyer psychology has gone from frustrated to realistic. People are re-signing their leases knowing that at 7%, they're not gonna be able to afford a home this year, but, hopeful on being able to buy a home. But I think it really boils down to the fact that Gen Z and elder millennials have kind of written off homeownership as the ultimate goal, which is a real shift in generational psychology. And it's a product of interest rates just being so high for so long.
Yeah, and Ellen, let me ask you this. What needs to be done to make the American dream of buying a home within reach for folks?
When interest rates come down even slightly, people make a move. We can predict it by the weekend. It's funny. I'll tell my agents, giddy up, because interest rates have come down even a quarter of a smidge of a percent, because just that little bit will put a buyer back into the market. So it really just boils down to interest rates at this point.
Yeah, Alan, what about you? Weigh in here.
Yeah, I just want to give a plug to my colleague, John Gibbs. He has this interesting argument where he says the federal government is attacking the wrong side of the market. It's trying to increase housing supply through local zoning reforms, but it doesn't control local zoning. What it controls is mortgage policy. And he says that government-backed mortgages increase purchasing power and therefore demand while housing supply is slow to respond. So more money chasing limiting housing could push prices up. If the federal government would reduce mortgage subsidies and let states and cities handle supply, it would be better. So in other words, the federal government is trying to fix housing mainly by encouraging states and cities to build more, but the federal government has much more direct control over mortgage demand than local zoning. And with our, mortgage-backed securities, mortgage-backed insurance, the FHA, the VA, the USCDA, all these different programs, we get this government-backed secondary mortgage market, and we have things like the 30-year mortgage, which are actually, globally kind of unusual. We'd be much better off if everyone just had 15-year mortgages, but we have these programs in place that are almost like federal student loans, and government helps turn these mortgages into cash, and banks can make more mortgages, and more people can borrow. The result is we have the federal government backing more than $10 trillion in mortgages.
Yeah, well, Alan and Holly, great to be with you guys this morning. Really interesting conversation. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.